Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. During American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we celebrate the many contributions of Asian Americans have made and continue to make to North Carolina's communities, schools, and workforce. Our presenter will be Dr. Ting Wang. She will share real life stories, data, and experiences that address these questions and ignite the work being done by the Asian and Pacific Islander Caucus, the APIC. APIC is an organization that supports the AAPI community and seeks peace, equality, and a society free of racism, stereotypes, xenophobia, violence, and intolerance while promoting awareness, education, and advocacy. Before we go further into today's program, I would like to do some housekeeping. As always, keep your microphone on mute throughout the entire session. Please send all of your questions to the chat room. The chat room will be monitored and we will make sure all of your questions are answered in an orderly fashion. This session will be recorded and you will be able to view the program later on demand. Speaking of on-demand recordings, you will be notified of this program's availability and all of our recent programs when they are ready to be viewed. We are pleased to announce the following upcoming program: Military Appreciation Month, April the 8th. We look forward to seeing you there. I'm going to turn the program over to my colleague at OSHR, Lisa Coffey. Lisa?
Thank you, Wendy. If you received the announcements about this program, you have already seen our guest speaker's very impressive bio. You know that Ting Wang is an accomplished academic and assistant professor in the Department of Sociology and Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies program at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and the chair and one of the founders of the UNCG chapter of the Asian and Pacific Islander Caucus, and a passionate advocate for the AAPI community. However, she would like to share a little more about herself that's not covered in her bio. Ting hails from Hangzhou, China, and decided to come to the U.S. to earn a second PhD in sociology from the University of Kentucky after realizing that one PhD just wasn't enough to satisfy her insatiable thirst for knowledge. She earned her first PhD in economics from Zhejiang University in China. Her work has been published in multiple top-tier peer-reviewed journals and edited volumes. In her upcoming monograph, The Lonely Generation, which will focus on the impact of China's one-child policy on gender inequalities and gendered deviance, is set to release sometime in the coming months or 2024. Ting's specialties are in criminology and criminal justice, which makes sense since she spends most of her time trying to figure out how to keep her two rambunctious boys in line. Before moving to North Carolina, she spent 6 years in Ohio and Kentucky teaching, researching, perfecting her Southern drawl, and developing a love for all things country. When she's not busy being supermom, Ting enjoys kicking back on the couch and binge watching Netflix like it is her job. She says, if you need any advice on how to balance work, family, and couch potato time, she's your go-to. Talk to Ting. So without further ado, let's hear from Dr. Wang.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lisa, for the introduction. And thank you for having me here. And I'm very honored to be here to give a speech in honor of the API Heritage Month. And thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your precious lunch break to join us for this special gathering. I also want to extend a hearty thank you on behalf of our community to the organizers of this event. When I informed my Asian friends that I would be speaking today in honor of this Heritage Month, they were thrilled as if they themselves got invited. The recognition of API Heritage Month and the opportunity to speak here are truly significant for all of us. Well, as a college instructor and a researcher of crime, I'm used to speaking in the third person, the theys, she's, he's of the word. But today, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone and diving into the world of first person narratives. So bear with me as I navigate these uncharted waters, feeling little bit like fish out of water right now, trying to talk well about us. My name is Ting Wang, or Ting Wing as American pronunciation. And I'm currently a faculty member at the UNCG. 10 years ago, I moved to the US from China to pursue my second PhD degree. During the past decade, I have lived in Kentucky, Ohio, and finally settled down in North Carolina about 4 years ago. This region has truly captured my heart compared to the hustle and bustle of the big cities up north or out west. I've found a perfect balance of urban amenities and the rural charm right here. Gone are the days of being trapped in endless traffic jams or shelling out a small fortune for parking. Additionally, North Carolina boasts an exceptional university system with an international and national reputation for excellence and groundbreaking publications. And let's not forget the fantastic weather we are enjoying right now and here. But what truly sealed the deal for me was the genuine warmth and friendliness of the people. They've always been welcoming and caring. And I felt at ease knowing that my boys could ride their bikes outdoor without a care in the world. Unfortunately, my sense of security was shattered in March 2020, just a month after a mysterious virus first appeared in China, the country I had left behind 7 years earlier. One fateful day, as I walked across a grocery store parking lot with bags of food in one hand and my 5-year-old son's hand in the other, a car honked angrily behind us. A woman screamed, "If you don't go back to your country, I will run you over." I was shocked to realize she was targeting us. That day, I don't recall how I made it home. All I remember is shaking and shivering uncontrollably. Even now, I'm still shaking when I'm talking about that. In graduate school, discussions about race typically revolved around white, black, sometimes Hispanic groups. Other categories were often overlooked, deemed too small in number to warrant attention. I used to jest that these classifications were white, black, and others. Through my research, I've striven to shed light on these marginalized groups and emphasize their importance in America. Yet, after that harrowing parking lot encounter, and for more than a year afterward, all I wanted was to blend in. I longed to hide my skin, my face, and my children. As a single mother of 2 young boys, having escaped an abusive marriage, I had never felt so isolated and terrified in my life. I don't know where the danger might come from or who might pose a threat. I resorted to having groceries delivered to avoid going out, bringing our shoes indoors to mask the presence of an Asian family, and only allowing my sons to play in the backyard where they couldn't be seen. For the first time, I wished my children and I hadn't been born Asian. The mindset changed when an even more devastating tragedy unfolded in Atlanta, Georgia, where a shooter targeted 3 spas owned by Asian Americans. 6 of the 8 people killed were women of Asian descent. This heart-wrenching event served as a wake-up call for our community as we realized that hiding will never keep us safe. When animals feel threatened, they flock together. When humans sense danger, they join forces and rise up. In response to this newfound awareness, our Asian and Pacific Islander Caucus, or APIC, was born. We acknowledge that it was crucial for the AAPI community to unite and take action. Together, we are stronger and more capable of facing the challenges that lie ahead. As we came together to establish the EPIC, we shared our experiences as members of the AAPI community. To our astonishment, we discovered that these incidents were alarmingly common. Some experiences were violent and explicit, like my own encounter. Many others, however, were subtler forms of microaggression. One Asian American professor recounted a baffling incident where, over several weeks, he constantly found pennies smeared with mustard beside his front door. After cleaning them up, they would reappear soon after. These mustard-covered coins are a classic hate symbol targeting the API community as we've perceived as yellow and dirty. Some members spoke of being shunned in public settings. One staff member shared that a colleague would avoid approaching her desk, but had no issue interacting with others. Ironically, this staff member, a third-generation immigrant from Hong Kong, had never been to China in her entire life. Similar experiences were shared by other Asian descendants, particularly those of East Asian descent. When the Delta variant led to certain cases in India, our Indian colleagues reported encountering similar incidents. However, when other variants emerged in regions like the UK with the Alpha variant, the sentiment of prejudice was very different. Beyond these anecdotal accounts, we confirm that such experiences were widespread on a national scale. So I'm moving to the slides as I made some statistics and charts to just inform or entertain the audience. So I'm a professor of criminology, so it's kind of my occupational hazard that I would come back to the number of crimes. So bear with me. To illustrate the national scope of this issue, let's examine the category of anti-Asian hate crime. These crimes are motivated by prejudice against victims based on their Asian or perceived Asian identities. According to FBI statistics, there has been a constant and drastic increase in reported hate crimes against the Asian and Pacific Islander population during the pandemic. The left hand is the chart for Asian-only crimes, and for the right hand, that's included Pacific Islander population as well, both showing that for example, in 2022, the number of cases was more than 4 times higher than before the pandemic. However, these reported cases represent only the tip of the iceberg, and the true extent of victimization remains largely unknown due to the significant underreporting of anti-Asian crimes. For instance, the self-reporting website Stop AAPI Hate, which offers reporting options in various Asian languages, recorded over 4,600 incidents over a 9-month period in 2020 and over 6,000 incidents in 2021, with 2,400 of these cases occurring in the first 3 months of 2021. Among these self-reported incidents, I will keep here. Among the self-reported incidents, verbal harassment accounted for the largest share of the total, and the physical assault. Sorry. Among these self-reported incidents, verbal harassment accounted for the largest share, which is about 63% of the total. Physical assault or intimidation made up the second largest, with 16.2%, followed by deliberate avoidance of AAPI individual. And among these reported incidents, some would account for the civil rights violation, for example, that happened at workplace, like workplace discrimination a refusal of service, being barred from transportation, and housing-related discrimination, which comprise about 11.5% of all total incidents. Almost half of all reported hate incidents happened in the public space, with 31% on public streets, 8.4% on public transit, and 8% in public parks. Chinese Americans reported the most, about 42.8% among all ethnic groups, followed by Korean, Filipino, Japanese, and Vietnamese Americans. If we broaden our scope to include bear with me, there's something like that I missed. Here is also like women would make up about 62% of the reported incidents. If we count non-binary API respondents in terms of gender, they would experience more such incidents than API women and men. If we broaden our scope to include non-reported experiences of bias and discrimination, the situation appears even more daunting for Asians in the US. A recent report published by Columbia University based on a national survey of 6,500 Chinese Americans found that nearly 3 out of 4 Chinese Americans have experienced racial discrimination in the past 12 months. 55% worrying about their safety related to hate crime and harassment. 9% have been physically intimidated or assaulted, and 7% haven't had property vandalized or damaged. Nearly half of the survey respondents reported being treated with less respect than other people at least a few times in the past 12 months. 1 in 5 reported that people made a racial slur, called them a name, or harassed them in person or online at least a few times in the past 12 months. Just minutes before the meeting, one member of our APEC sent me a report published 2 days ago by the Asian American Foundation. They published their annual survey today, and it reviews 1 in 2 Asian Americans feel unsafe. Nearly 80% do not fully feel they belong and are accepted in the US. Even though these experiences might be subtle, they are not insignificant or ignorable. The same report indicated that nearly 1 in 4 Chinese Americans are at some risk of mental illness when asked about their psychological distress, including feeling worthless, depressed, hopeless, restless, nervous, or that everything was an effort, exactly feeling I had during that year after that incident. And most important is most of them didn't seek help or were unsure how to find assistance. Another research article published in the Journal of Nature further suggests that the cost extends beyond personal health. The authors used the consumer traffic flows to demonstrate how blaming Asian Americans for the virus has impacted the revenue of Chinese and other Asian restaurants in America. On one hand, the frequency of Google searches regarding the safety of Chinese restaurants surged during the pandemic's onset, which is illustrated by this red line, as compared to the searches before. On the other hand, their large-scale perception surveys confirmed that the decline in customer traffic was rooted in fear and blame directed at Asian Americans for the virus. For example, over 40% of the participants believed Asians were most responsible for COVID-19, and more than a third thought Chinese food increased the risk of infection. I conducted a survey with Chinese restaurant owners regarding their experiences of anti-Asian hate crimes during the pandemic. One of the participants asked such a question: how come the food I sell suddenly became dangerous after I haven't been selling it for over 30 years. Moreover, such prejudice and racism did not solely impact Chinese restaurants or Chinese Americans, but spilled over to other Asian American populations and their businesses as well. As many people cannot distinguish between different outgroups. As a result, Asian restaurants experienced an over 18% decrease in customer traffic compared to non-Asian restaurants, amounting to about $7.42 billion in revenue in 2020 alone. The impact on Chinese restaurants was just the tip of the iceberg. Other businesses, such as dental offices, law firms, medical practices, and accounting firms, if associated with a particular ethnic group due to naming conventions, reported similar customer discrimination. The establishment of our EPIC for the UNC system arose from the realization that we could no longer stay silent about racism and discrimination faced by people of AAPI descent in their daily lives. With the goals of promoting awareness, providing education, and offering support, our organization was launched in May 2021. The AAPI Heritage Month, just the AAPI Heritage Month 2 years ago. In EPIC, each UNC campus has its own chapter. We began with 20 members only, and in just 2 years, EPIC has grown to 15 chapters with over 300 faculty and staff members, with UNCG being the largest and one of the most active chapters. At the UNCG chapter, we have a co-chair structure with Ms. Liang in charge of the staff section and myself responsible for coordinating faculty members. Over the past 2 years, we have served as a bridge, connecting our members to a series of events and activities both on and beyond the campus. We organize cultural holiday celebrations for our members and communities. We advocated for the inclusion of caste as a protected category in the university's anti-discrimination policies and language. For those unfamiliar, caste is a social class system originating from Hindu society, distinguished by inheritable social status. We collaborate with several AAPI student associations to organize events and workshops, such as lantern painting, to recognize diverse cultural traditions. We also invited the UNCG Police Department to give workshops on responding to hate incidents, including how to protect evidence and ourselves, as well as how to report and raise awareness of bias incidents. The past year, UNCG established an affinity group council under the DEI office, which includes EPIC as one of its branches. Through this council connection, we design and organize events across multiple associations, such as the Black Faculty and Staff Association, International Scholar Group, and Women's Scholar Association, among others. Currently, we are drafting a federal grant proposal to secure funding for on-campus prevention programs against bias-motivated incidents in general. Our UNCG chapter also serves as a bridge connecting our members with the larger EPIC UNC system. While we celebrate Heritage Month together, we also aim to be a central resource, serving the AAPI community in North Carolina beyond the university system. Though the virus may be retreating, the hatred it sparked toward the AAPI community could linger. There's much more to be done within and beyond our EPIC organization to promote social justice and address racism and discrimination against the AAPI community. And without your support, we can't make it. On May 7, 1843, the first Japanese immigrants arrived in the US. And on May 10, 1869, the Transcontinental Railroad was completed with the contribution of many Chinese laborers. In recognition of these two significant anniversaries, Congress passed a resolution in 1978 to celebrate API Heritage Week during the first 10 days of May. In 1990, President George H.W. Bush and the Congress voted to expand the celebration. So since 1992, May has been designated as API Heritage Month. API Heritage Month offers Asian Americans and the Pacific Islanders the opportunity to express, celebrate, preserve, and reconnect with their cultures, histories, and accomplishments while advocating for their place in the fight for racial justice. Simultaneously, API Heritage Month provides other Americans with the chance to embrace their fellow API members and appreciate how, together, we enrich America's culture and the society, and have contributed to building and uniting this country across generations. In our North Carolina community, many of us, like me, have experienced living in multiple countries and the US states before choosing to settle down and raise our families here, as we believe it is the best place for us, our children, and future generations. We're proud of our Asian and the Pacific Islander heritage, and equally proud of our contributions to North Carolina and America as a whole. Thank you very much. So I just used less time than expected.
Yes, I see that you have used less time than expected, but it was very good information. And your story at the beginning was very, very, it was very heartfelt. Your story that you were telling. Let's see, I'm looking now to see if there are any questions that are in the chat, since we are rounding up that part of the presentation a little earlier. So I want to check with everyone to see if you have any questions. And while we are waiting on questions, I wanted to know a little more about your organizations. You talked a little bit about them, but can you tell me a little bit more about your organizations on campus?
Sure. So on campus, if talking about the UNCG chapter, our members covered about half of all the self-identified API population, including faculty members and the staff members. So Caucus is an association voluntarily organized by employees of the UNC system. So therefore, on campus, most of the time, it's more like a very casual place for people to get connected and talk. Usually we would share some thoughts about holidays. However, for the API population per se, it's very diverse. It includes over 30 countries and cultures. And in each country, there are some countries also have many different cultures and ethnic groups. So therefore, it's kind of a learning process for every member. So we learn each other's culture, even though we all belong to this community, but we didn't know that before coming to this caucus and interact with each other. So it's also a learning and eye-opening process. So we also organize some workshops and presentations, as I introduced, by the police department of the UNCG, to give idea about how to protect ourselves if something happens. And it's not just limited to the API or our EPIC, but it's open to the public. So therefore, we hope everyone could, get benefited from this information.
That's some really good information about your programs on campus. I do have a question here for you, and let me go ahead and make sure I have everything up with it. You spoke a lot about overt discrimination and harassment, which was illuminating. Someone had a question of they're interested in the aggressions you may experience. Are the terms people use or behaviors they exhibit that are offensive, but you're not aware of it? How can we be better allies and not use microaggressions?
That's a good question. Actually, sometimes I would say there's some racial slurs we would perceive as serious and important or significant, but some racial slurs people would think, oh, it's a joke, it's funny, not think like as significant as other racial slurs. However, all these racial slurs or names based on the stereotypes, they're wrong. So they're equally serious. Every racial slur is wrong and we should not use them. I've heard a lot like talking ways like, oh, just a joke. Don't take it serious, but that's not joke. You should think from like there are two parties, right? When you talk, the person who talk and the person who hear. You have to think from the person who hear this conversation and think about how they want to see that. Um, yeah, so I really feel like there's not just the racial slurs in API community, there are also some gestures that is viewed as offensive and problematic. So, and the other way I would suggest is making friends with us and talk with us about. Then you can just be, candid. I believe many of us are very, honest and candid about what we like, what we would not like. So, it's a way of, mutual learning.
You gave us some statistics earlier about hate crimes, but someone wanted to know: are you seeing a trend of a decrease in the number of Asian hate crimes as of late?
Fortunately, no. So there's a slide reported like the trend, which you can see like from 2019 to 2022. The trend is constant increase. Even as I mentioned, the virus is retreating and the pandemic will end this month. So, however, this is not a bad thing, especially we use the data from the FBI, which is reported hate crimes. One part is because why there are more in 2022 than 2020, for example. The reason is because people are more aware, especially victims. They're more aware of these things after, after the 2 years, 3 years of this. So therefore, when that happened, there are many kind of training camps or training webinars, so on and so forth, teaching people how to report or when you should report. And also there are many assistants, officially or unofficially, helping people to report. Like what I said, like the website, the Stop API Hate, after you submit that information, like self-reported incident, they will ask you if you want help with reporting to the official, like to the police department, for example. Therefore, there are more data collected by the FBI or collected by the police as a way to show like that might explain why there's an increase in 2020, and that increase is drastic. It's probably because like it still happens, but people also more, realize and the underreporting problem is mitigated. However, um, I do hate crime not just about pandemic, but based on the historical experience. Um, like the as I said, the virus might be short term, but the sentiment is lasting. The history always repeats itself. So and it could be longer than the virus or the pandemic.
Um, I have a question that I see in the chat sent to me. It's regarding the rise in the Asian American hate and prejudice. What advice do you have and you may have answered part of this, but what other advice do you have for those of us who want to do more to alleviate the anxiety, insecurity, and vulnerability Asian Americans maybe still experience, and even in our workplace, and maybe Asian Americans, some advice for them as well?
So I have advice, actually two advices. One to, I don't have much advice to Asian Americans because I'm also a victim, kind of.
Right.
But I have advice based on, it's also based on research about when crime could be avoided. That is based on when there's a potential guardian. What is potential guardian? It doesn't mean like you have to fight people, you have to fight the bad guy. No, when you stand there, you portray as a guardian. So if you say you don't have to, like, for example, risk your life or risk your safety to get in front of the victim. Instead, it just portray like you hold different opinions. Then, for example, this racist, then the racist would drop this crime, and that happens in 85 cases over 100. So therefore, just your presence and your different opinion would hinder the potential offender from doing that. So therefore, my advice would be still like making friends across the racial lines, knowing each other more, and be their support.
Yes, that's great advice. Definitely. We can all do that. Actually, I have another one. Can you comment on how media, specifically American films, have contributed to this negative stereotype about Asian Americans and how they lead to prejudice?
Sure. I was reading this report before this meeting, and I want to share some very interesting findings in this report I just mentioned. It published on May the 2nd by the Asian American Foundation. And in this section, so they asked respondents who were like over 16, age 16 and above, American born respondents, asking them about whether they could name a famous Asian American figure that they see on TV. About 26% of them said they could not name a famous Asian American figure, and the 32% could not name a famous Pacific Islander person. When asked to name a famous Asian American figure, top responses were Jackie Chan, who is not American, Bruce Lee, who died 50 years ago, and Kamala Harris. That's it, like the top three, which is very illustrative, actually. So I feel like the Hollywood or the mass media, the portray is kind of absence, like especially positive portraits. So I understand that when the participants were asked to name a famous Asian American figure they see on TV, they think about the positive ones. And the ones they think about positive are only these three. And so it's still very, Bruce Lee has passed away long time ago. And it's still, when we talk about Asian American movies, it's still thinking about him. So it's really like something like lacked there.
Thank you. Yes.
I have another question for you. You touched on the mental health of victims of hate crimes. Are community-based agencies available to the victims, and how do they find out about support groups?
That's a good question. We actually don't have any like community-based so far as I know. Um, the problem is, one is like the Asian community, Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, they have a lot of immigrants, especially first generation immigrant. So therefore, there's a barrier for, we will say, how to accommodate their needs with the current or existing resources. As most resources in North Carolina, they're based on English speaking or Spanish speaking personnel So therefore, it's kind of hard to integrate the current resources with the need. And more often, like for example, we say we could hire the translator or interpreter to help with that need. And the other issue is, as I said, they're very diverse. Like when we talk about API, it's not one group. There are many. Like in our caucus, like we have so many different ethnic groups that sometimes we have a hard time to catch up or tally how many cultures or ethnic groups we have. Therefore, if hiring translator or interpreter, then you would expect that would be a very huge load, as you have to be inclusive for every member of the community. And also there's a part about that is it's kind of a cultural thing. Like for Asian Americans and the Pacific Islanders, including myself, I'm not very used to like step out and asking for help. Usually we will say we don't want to bother others, like it's our own problem. We have to solve it on ourselves. So it's kind of such a mentality, and we don't want to ask for help. So I never, during the year, over 1 year after that incident happened, I was just locked myself in my children's home. And they, like that time, my older son, the younger son, both of them were at daycare. I didn't send them to daycare and just parenting themselves on my own for such a long time. So mentally, I was in a very vulnerable position. Like it's hard. Um, but I didn't think about seeking the help or any assistance, even though I don't have much problem with English, or I don't have problem with reading, or searching online, but I didn't do that. I feel like part is because of this culture or the mental pressure about asking for help or seeking help. However, I feel like there's something could do is how if someone reached out to me at that moment, I would take it. But like as I said, it's hard to accommodate the needs with the resources.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story and really increasing the awareness. And on that note, I'd like to know, what do you feel like the biggest lesson you have gained from the past 2 years from all this ordeal?
The part it's I feel like I have a deeper understanding of race for real. Like
Mm.
I was trained in sociology. Sociology, like racial or race, is always a big topic in sociology as we understand the social structure from the racial perspective. However, as I mentioned in our training in these classic readings, the journal papers, the it's very binary. Like the race here in discussion and dialogue lacks a part. Not just one part, actually. There's like more than the API community. There are also Native Americans. There are also Native Hawaiian, or they also categorized as Pacific Islanders. But there are more like the Middle Easterners. So Arabic people. So therefore, I just have a deeper understanding of race based on my personal experience. I remember when I was a student, when we had this conversation, like discussion in the class, based on race topic, I was like the one talking about from the, white and black perspectives because that's what I taught. I never thought like myself could be a part of that. And after experiencing that, I feel like personally I have a stronger um, standing or holding for the racial justice, just not just for the Asian or Pacific Islanders, but for all races. Um, I feel like when something happens in front of me against some other people, I will stand up for them. I feel like I could be the guardian as well. Also, for the other lessons, um, something is out of our control, like the COVID-19. We couldn't control that. Um, and for example, for the perception or misperception of the person or stereotype, it's also collective. Like you probably, I talked to you here, may change your perception a little bit, but personally, I can't change that everyone or as a collective way. So I really think this is something the state or the government can do, like to get more or to involve more um, diverse and inclusive racial education. So this is what my thought.
Thank you. Those are all very insightful, and just I'm sorry again for that experience, but you have really grown and learned a lot to share with the rest of us, and I think it'll make a difference. I know, yeah. Wendy, do you have any, are you seeing any on your end?
I am looking to see if there are any more questions, but I'm also, uh, well, I have one more question. Hold on here.
I see a lot of thank yous and a great job. So I've gotten that feedback for sure.
Yes, that's what I've gotten as well. She's answered so many questions and given out so much statistical information for people to go back and look at. So I believe that was a lot of their questions may have been answered with those statistics. So it's a little bit of a challenge there for some of the questions. But everyone is saying it's very insightful and they appreciate your stories and everything that you were sharing. I did want to ask you, are there some other celebrations going on with Pacific Islander Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month in your area, Greensboro, or even across the state that you know about that you'd like to share?
Yes, yes, there are actually a lot. So in our local museum, there always the celebration. And I last time they celebrated the Chinese New Year, I would just catch up on whether when they plan to celebrate um, the Heritage Month. But as far as I know, I this morning I just saw announcement about a presentation. Yeah, just from that Greensboro Museum. Say they organized that also during the lunchtime, like from 12 to 1. It's also based online. So they would invite three Asian, like the Asian descent, to give Asian and the Pacific Island descent to give a presentation about introducing their experiences, their the family histories, and so forth. And there's another one called PAVE NC, like PAVE NC. They also have a similar organization, like presentation and workshop celebrating this month. Um, so far we the month is kind of awkward actually for the university setting because the school is finished, is over, and our students are gone. Almost like all the faculty members and the staff members, they're ready for travel for the other issues. They like the campus turned to be kind of empty. So it's very hard for us to organize events or activities at this month. But we are planning to move probably to the late April next year to engage more people who are still on campus.
Yes, I've seen that actually with a couple of campuses where they have their events earlier because students start leaving late April to early May. So they have their programs earlier for AAPI Heritage Month. And I would just like to say that we were very excited about having you here today to share your stories and tell us more about Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And I would like to encourage everyone to celebrate AAPI Heritage Month throughout the year, not just during the month of April. And I would just, again, encourage everyone to celebrate. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Wayne, for presenting today. And on behalf of the Office of State Human Resources, again, just thank you for your presentation today. And again, encouraging us all to look at how we can be better allies with members of the AAPI community. So again, I would just like to thank you for presenting today. And at this time, I'd like to wish everyone a happy afternoon. And this will conclude our presentation. And everyone have a great day. And we look forward to seeing you at our next program. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you, everyone.